Beautiful.
Okay. Here we go. And then I'm also going to test that out. I think there's 25 RSVPs, so we'll probably wait a few minutes, and you let me know, Adam, if you want to kind of tee everything up.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to jump on in just a second here and introduce you and obviously to the people we know.
Cool. In the meantime, I'm going to play this little video for everybody, okay? It's a little 3-minute video. Let's go here.
Telling me that you have a way to defer the tax situation there? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And so the first one I was referring to is a 1031 exchange, which only applies to investment real estate. The second one I'm referring to is called a deferred sales trust.
A real eye opener to see that there are ways that people can use the regulatory framework, if properly structured, to invest 1031 exchange dollars in things that you would not think were like kind to what they exited from. So it was very impressive. I got to say, you are the first one I've seen pull this off, and I'm pretty hesitant to believe in a lot of these kinds of things. So it's a major feat for me to say, wow, this actually really worked. And it was really cool.
1031 is a way to shelter your income when you sell the thing. The DST is a way to avoid the 1031 and not have to suffer the time penalty.
Our career and during different tax periods, we've seen, these tax avoidance, tax minimization, offshore, all these different strategies undertaken to minimize or avoid taxes. And then I can tell you that, some of them are just not worth the trouble. And so I was skeptical. Admittedly, I was skeptical. I thought, oh yeah, here we go, another one of these, right? And then they say, no, it really is different, right? So look more closely. We looked more closely. We had, honestly, 2 years of conversations. 2 years. Now we were being due diligence at the same time that we were doing due diligence, but 2 years is a long time to be, sort of flirting with the idea of and getting to know the people and getting to really understand the transaction. Yeah, long story short, we got comfortable, although we are not tax attorneys, lawyers, or estate planning attorneys, that at least, from an investment perspective, that, it made sense to sell a highly appreciated asset, get liquid, hold that in this type of a deferred or installment sale type of instrument, and then just be in a position then to do the most important thing. I'm probably stealing your next question, which is time. They say, well, you can't make more time. You can. The Deferred Sales Trust, in a way, allows you to lengthen the investment time horizon for those assets after getting liquid, but before having to feel the tax impact. And from an investment manager's perspective, time horizon is the most important element in investing.
All right, Brett, you're on mute, but I'll welcome our friends in. It's Adam Lendy, of course. Justin's here as well, too. Happy Camper Capital and the Wealth Watchers podcast. Thank you guys for joining us. We had about 25 RSVPs, but I bet you a handful of those are just waiting on the recording. So that said, I'll introduce Brett to you guys in a second here. We had the opportunity of interviewing him on the Wealth Watchers podcast a few weeks back, shared some great information. We've heard of other installment type sales before, but the solution he's got is truly unique, and we knew it was valuable to bring to our partners, to our investors, those we work with, just understanding the flexibility it allowed us in letting our investors, choose which assets they're bringing into the deals we work, and of course other deals as well too. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to you, Brett. So thanks for hosting this for us.
Thanks, Adam. So appreciate the opportunity here. And again, it was a pleasure to meet you gentlemen in person at the Best Ever Conference. And for those who are getting to know me for the first time, my name is Brett Swarts, and we're going to be talking about the unlocking the power of the Deferred Sales Trust. Now, I'm going to say to raise capital from crypto millionaires, but this is really from any millionaires, and it can be applied to, stock sales, business sales, real estate sales, all kinds of other things that are highly appreciated. For those who don't know me, I'm out of Sacramento, California. And I started out at a company called Marcus and Millichap, learning about investment real estate, multifamily brokerage in 2006. And it's an interesting time, right? And there's some parallels in a lot of ways. Prices were all-time highs, very low inventory, a lot of dollars chasing fewer and fewer deals, and people feeling frustrated with this 1031 exchange of we call it the shotgun wedding, 45 days to get engaged, 180 days to get married, and oftentimes letting the tax tail wag the investment dog. And it became a frustrating kind of cycle, but people, felt trapped by that 30 to 50% capital gains tax. And this is why Capital Gains Tax Solutions, we're going to help people have clarity on their options and then execute on the deferred sales trust should that be a suitable fit. But back to the story, it was 2006. Things are going pretty good, really good, and then things weren't. And I went from making a little bit of money at Marcus and Millichap to like nothing overnight, and I found myself in a very tough circumstance. Growing up, my parents had wealth, a lot of wealth at a young age, doing real estate development, cash flow, all in the Bay Area, cash flow deals. And then they got divorced, and it went from like my dad having all the money and my mom not having really any money, and my dad not sharing the money. And so I would spend some time with both of them, but most of the times with my mom. And so I knew at a young age that I never wanted finances to come and provide or be any kind of stressor in my life. So I always wanted to be very successful. So I had a chance to play basketball in college and take an internship at Marcus and Millichap. And so here I am. I've been successful. But knowing that I wanted to make it kind of big in business and real estate, and I got some momentum going, and then the market falls apart, and I go, oh my gosh, I'm like, what am I going to do? And to add to that, the pressures had built up because I was newly married. I had our first baby daughter on the way, my wife and I did, and I found myself going, oh man, we're going into debt, and things are piling up, and I was scared, financially scared, emotionally, like feeling like these flashbacks of my parents just divorced when I was young, and I was just like, this is just a lot. What am I going to do? And so I sat down with my wife. I'm like, hey, honey, we're going to have to make some sacrifices. Like A, either have to give up on the dream of commercial real estate, or B, we're going to have to move with my brother into a small condo and then get a side hustle at a place called Cheesecake Factory. So that's exactly what I did. By day, I'd work at Marcus and Millichap, cold call, negotiating with banks, helping my clients hold onto their properties. And by night, I'd work at Cheesecake Factory. And it was kind of like this dual hustle. And it kept the dream alive, but it was still very challenging. And my clients, again, were going through the challenge too, because they looked around and going, oh my gosh, these 1031s aren't so great anymore. They were great before, but I didn't want to be in this position where I have to claw out of these deals the next couple of years. And my manager at the time, Marcus Millichap in Sacramento, brought in a gentleman who's now my business partner to tell us about the Deferred Sales Trust. And it was a moment where I remember sitting in that office like it was yesterday. It was a random Wednesday lunch meeting, and there's about 30 of us. And he comes in and starts telling us about this. And I'm going, we're all sitting there going, this sounds too good to be true. This sounds like I would have already known about this. Like, how does this thing even work? Is it legal? But curious enough to say, if this is truly the way of the future, this will change everything. And that began my journey of this Deferred Sales Trust and how to use it, how to work with clients. And I literally had zero knowledge of this in 2009. And, but as I started to learn a little bit more about it, I started to send them referrals. I started to serve my clients in another way, a new way, we think a better way. And all of a sudden my listings, more deals, more opportunities. At the end of the day, solving more problems, which is what I always say to all of the folks I talk with and present to. I'm not in the business of selling the Deferred Sales Trust. I'm a California real estate broker, multifamily broker. I've sold about $100 million in real estate, all of those things. I'm an investor, but I'm not in the business of selling any of that. I'm in the business of just solving my clients' problems or potential clients' problems, as well as working with folks who are trying to do the same for their clients, their investors. And so I started to apply the deal, the strategy. I started to help more people, and I was able to retire from the Cheesecake Factory. My wife was able to stay home full time. Now we have 5 kids, and she's never had to go back to work, which is a big value of ours. And we live here in Sacramento, married about 13 years, and now it's my honor and my pleasure to be able to share the knowledge, as much of my knowledge with you as I can, on this Deferred Sales Trust here in the next about 20 minutes, and then we'll open it up for questions. And so the number one thing is, what is a Deferred Sales Trust? Well, it's important to understand that it's not a 1031 exchange. Okay, it's not a 1031 exchange. It's also not a Delaware statutory trust, which is unfortunately the same acronym, DST and DST. They get confused every single day. And in fact, you'll get off of this webinar and be like, oh, the DST, I already knew about that. Or, and you'll tell your CPA and they say, oh yeah, I know about that. And you got to really like slow them down and say, it's not a Delaware 1031. That's a better name for it. A Delaware statutory trust is a separate tax code. It's a part of the 1031 family. We are IRC 453, which is part of the installment sale family, completely different tax code, but the same acronym. And so it's just an unfortunate circumstance, but that's the idea. This is not a 1031. In fact, a 1031 exchange, I liken to Blockbuster. And I don't know, Adam, if you remember going to Blockbuster on a random Friday night and your significant other's all excited for you to get that movie. And you can see it at the end of the aisle. Can you see it there? And you see the cardboard box that's pushed out and you're like, yes, that's the movie. I'm there. And you're going for it, right? Because this is success for you. But like 2 steps before you get there, somebody steps in front of you and grabs that same movie and smiles at you. And you're like, and you tip your hat because you're like, you got there before me. But inside, like you're like broken. You're like, why can't I just rent the same movie? Why has it got to be checked out? You got to get the second movie. You ever been there, Adam?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then, but you got that movie, right? And you still got a second movie. So you settle for that. But then you take it home. And you put it in the movie, you put it in, if it's a DVD at that point, you put it in there and either it's scratched or you got to rewind it or whatever, right? And then you have to return it within 3 days. And you're probably thinking, there's got to be a better way, right? Well, that's like the 1031, right? You got to be 45-day 180. We already talked about that, the shotgun wedding. You also have to put it in what's called like-kind investment properties. You also have to replace equal or greater value or equal or greater debt. You have to follow all these little like kind of weird rules, if you will, right? And it puts you in a tough position. You're like, why isn't it 180 days to identify and 360 days to close? Like, why does it have to be like kind? Why can't it go into this stock market or go into passive deals? Why does it have to be equal or greater value? Like, it just, Blockbuster just at some point doesn't make any sense. And then a thing came around called Netflix. And what did Netflix do? They say, you never have to check out a movie. It's always just right there. You don't have to drive anywhere. You don't have to return it. There's some ongoing monthly fees. But guess what? How the deferred sales trust is like Netflix is you don't have to put it in like-kind real estate. In fact, you can just sit it in the bank. You can sit it in the bank. You can put it into stock market. I'm not a big stock market guy, but you can put it there. You can put it into hard money lending. You can put it into passive or active real estate deals. You can put it in with Adam and his team, right, in different deals. You can go on your own. You can do a little bit of both. In other words, you can diversify. And the biggest thing, you can do it at any time. There's no rush. In fact, the best one for this deal story for this is a guy named, I can't give his name, but he's out of Minnesota, and we call it the Monday morning quarterback. And this guy can tell you a couple things. One, he prints money in commercial real estate. Two, at this point in 2006, he's worth of a couple $100 million. Number three, he hates the stock market, okay? And he just loves being in control, doing deals himself, building wealth. And it's 2006, and he's looking around, and he's going, man, I don't know about this market. I think it's not a good time to buy. In fact, I know it's not a good time to buy. And I'm not going to do a 1031 exchange. I'm either going to pay the tax or I'm going to go out on a limb here and try something that I've never done before and use as a deferred sales trust. I'm going to trust the track record of thousands of closes, billions under management, and over multiple no-change IRS audits. And I'm going to try this deferred sales trust. And so what did he do? He sold the $20 million asset in Minnesota. If anyone's from Minnesota, this is where he's from. And he moved into the deferred sales trust and put it into very conservative stocks, bonds, mutual funds, nothing that was subject to huge crashes, right? And you can do that. If anyone's seen The Big Short, there's ways to protect that, okay? And we work with professional financial advisors. And if you have yours, we can bring them in to manage the money for that portion of it, okay? But anyways, he puts the money there and he waits. And he waits 5 years. And 5 years later, guess what happened? The bank calls him up and says, hey, you know that property you sold in 2006? And he goes, oh yeah, to that crazy 1031 California buyer, right? And they're like, yeah, that's him, yeah. Well, we just foreclosed on that gentleman, and we're just curious, do you want to buy it back from us? And he goes, well, maybe. What's the price? He says, they say 60 cents on the dollar. So you're telling me I can buy it back from you at 40% less than I sold it for? And we call this the Monday morning quarterback, right? If we would have known what would have happened in 08, and he didn't know it was going to go that low that fast, but we would have dropped back. We would have sold everything in 06. We would have paid all of our tax. We would have sat with our cash in the bank, and we would have waited 2, 3, 4, 5 years and just slowly bought properties at 50 cents on the dollar, 60 cents on the dollar, 30 cents on the dollar. that, of course, no one can figure that out or done that except for the big short people. But what I'm telling you is he did that with his trust, right? He deferred the tax, and then he said, fine, no problem. Give me a couple days. He reallocated the funds inside of an LLC. And this is the part where you go from a lender to an owner, okay? And he bought the property back at 60 cents on the dollar, not using a 1031, okay? So, Adam, I want to pause there because honestly, without that concept, I wouldn't be here. And I want to make sure that crystal clear, maybe you can replay what I just said. I want to make sure you caught what happened right there.
Yeah, definitely. So, and Brett, I'm glad you are pausing for this here too, because it took us hearing this a couple of times to understand the concept. Obviously, we interviewed you on the podcast, and it started clicking then, and then of course seeing you at Best Ever Conference, and having you go through it a second time, and then actually even sitting through the Q&A there for the third time really solidified it. But the point being, you really get to stop the clock on that shotgun wedding, which I shared my personal experience. I had 2 failed 1031 exchanges in the past year. Ouch. Where, something like this can help prevent that from happening. But, furthermore, you can cross assets. So as you mentioned in that case, obviously real estate into stocks and bonds or vice versa. So just very versatile product.
Perfect. Excellent. So thanks for sharing that. I appreciate that. And so that is the Deferred Sales Trust so far. Sell high, buy low. Sell high, diversify. Sell high, get some liquidity. Sell high, invest dollar cost average. For some people, it means going from active to passive. Some people, it's a little bit of both. I had a client named Chuck, and Chuck for 25 years was in multifamily. And last week he closed after like 25 years of student housing in Tucson, Arizona, managing his own property. He's like, Brett, I'm done. He netted about 1.7 into the trust, deferred hundreds of thousands of dollars of tax. And he's just like, let's get passive. I'm ready to enjoy my life. I don't need huge returns. Like right now, I don't want to overextend. I don't want any more debt. I don't want any toilets, trash liability. However, I want the option, should I get a little bit bored in retirement, right, to be able to go back in. And that's what the Deferred Sales Trust always gives you versus the Delaware Statutory Trust. It's a Delaware 1031. You've got to stay with somebody else, illiquid, huge fees, and not able to go into passive deals that are smaller. So that's for those that are wondering about that. Okay, so let me keep going on this presentation here. In fact, I'm just going to start sharing some deal stories because at the end of the day, I think those are the most important. So here we go. Oh, by the way, I'm going to remind you who this is for, okay? Our minimum size deal is $1 million net proceeds, $1 million gain, and it works for cryptocurrencies, NFTs, business sales. We just did a dental practice business sale out of New Jersey. He was a dentist for 30 years, and he sold his practice for about $1.5 million and has an extra $600,000, about 40% extra to be able to invest into real estate, into the stock market. And that's huge for him, right? It's huge. It's almost double what he would have had, right? And works, of course, for investment real estate. It can save a failing 1031, even past the 45 days, no problem. You're not having to identify the Deferred Sales Trust, although we do need to put it in the exchange agreement, and we have exchange companies that we work with to do this. So make sure that you're working with us on that because not every exchange company wants you to know about this, nor do they know how to do it. And so you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you have no backup plan, okay? Also, it works for GP or LP interest, again, as long as it's big enough. Primary homes, private stock, public stock, works for carried interest, captive insurance, artwork, collectibles. And this is what's possible for you. This is a client of mine. His name is Shay Pope, and you can hear him on my podcast, share his whole story. And he actually sold a business in Alabama for $2.6 million. He had a couple partners, and he's ready for the next journey. But his next journey was being an active multifamily developer. And I think, Adam, you might have met Shay, I'm not sure, at the Best Ever, but he was there.
Yep.
Anyways, he exited his business, deferred about $600,000 of tax, and then he partnered with the trust to become to be active again into an LLC, which he's the managing member of, and he used the funds to build 72 multifamily units, along with his partner too in the bank. I mean, it was more than just $600,000, but the point is, he became with the trust a limited partner into a bigger GP position, and that's just what's possible. So instead of getting $600,000 from the bank, instead of getting it from another private investor, he used the trust to fund it, of which he would have paid the tax to the government anyways. Right? Remember, a 1031 cannot happen with the business, but it did for him with the Deferred Sales Trust. Also, he put about $1.6 million with Praxis Capital and about $300,000 with another operator. Here's another deal in Silicon Valley, a primary home for a client of mine. Sold for $8.3 million. So remember, primary homes do not work for a 1031. That's why they're Blockbuster. But a deferred sales trust is Netflix because it can work for a primary home. And that was cool. Here's another one out of Georgia. A client of mine named Dave. And Dave had a couple things he wanted to solve. One, he was ready to start his legacy play, which is a big Montana ranch to help corporate leaders. And he needed his time and his energy to do that. That was more important to him than making more millions of dollars. However, he was faced with a 1031 exchange and about a $1.1 million tax liability. And he didn't want to chase another deal at 7.6. He said, you know what? I want to get out. I'm going to pay off 4.6 million of debt. So he wanted to be debt free to start. He wanted to be tax deferred, and he wanted to be passive, completely passive. And so he put the majority of the funds with the group called Praxis Capital, and he put a big chunk with a group called Ashcroft Capital. Okay, without doing a 1031 exchange, by the way. Remember that these groups, by the way, do not accept 1031 exchange money, right? Like most funds don't, and in fact, I don't know any that do. And so he was able to diversify and do that. Here's another deal in Colorado. It was a $5.1 million sale for a couple out of California. Now, their biggest thing was estate tax. So for any of you that are ultra high net worth above 22 million, married or 12 million single, there's a thing called a 40% death tax. And this is where we can exit the equity outside of your taxable estate. And we can eliminate 40% estate tax without buying life insurance, without having to do any gifting, without having to give it away to charity. Okay. In fact, one of the biggest deals for this was a $125 million deal in San Diego that was audited. Okay. And all no change audits so far. It's been perfect. Okay. Here's another client of mine. They actually live in California, but they sold a $20 million asset in Vegas and another $16 million deal in Phoenix. And they put their GP interest in, and the other LPs just pay their tax. The LPs could have done theirs. Just most LPs are 50 to 150,000 or so, that range, and it's not big enough for the trust. Now, if you had two LP interests at 500 and 500, can we combine those two into one? Yeah, we can to make it $1 million. But if it's smaller than that, our fees eat up the savings, and it won't be a good thing. So it does take a larger asset sale. Okay. All right, I'm gonna take a deep breath there. Adam, how am I doing?
Doing awesome, Brett.
Are you guys getting this so far?
Brett, I don't know if this is a little bit off topic from where you're going, and I apologize if it is, but I really appreciate an example that you'd made at the Best Ever conference where you explained, you kind of stood back and you explained the process of how it happened. So, the three people, seller, buyer, and in a sense, and then you.
Yeah. Right? Let's do it. That sounds great. Yeah, we'll do that right now. So let's get some audience participation. Who we got here? We got John, we got Shelly, we got Don, we got another John. We got two Johns. Oh, it looks like the same John, different. Who wants to participate? Anyone want to jump in on this with us? Try to bring this thing to life. We got Bill, we got Jay. Anybody? We'll wait.
All right.
Bill?
All right.
Bill, come on in, Bill. Can you unmute yourself?
I'm gonna need you to know.
Okay, Bill. Bill, where are you from?
I live in Grapevine, Texas.
All right. Just did a deal out in Lubbock, and we're doing another one out in Amarillo. Okay, Bill. So, do you want to? We can use a live deal, or we can just do a makeup deal.
Oh, I'll just imagine that my RV park is completed and it's sold, and let's say it's sold for let's say 16 million.
Okay. And what do you owe on that? What do you think you'd owe on at that point?
I'd owe about 7.
Okay. And then what about your debt? Oh, no, sorry, not your debt. What about your basis?
Let's see. The basis would be, probably about 7 million, I'm guessing.
Okay, that's perfect. Basis and the debt is equal, so that's actually perfect. Okay, so keep that there. All right. So let's say Adam finds an off-market buyer. He's like, "Man, Bill, I got a guy for you. Let's call him. Let's say his name is Don. Okay, Don. All right, because we got a Don on here. So Don has his 16 million, and he's ready to purchase your property, Bill. Yeah. Okay. Now, let's imagine for a second that it happened to be free and clear, and then we'll talk about the debt here in a second. Okay. But imagine it was free and clear. Now, Bill, if Don buys your property for 16 million and he gives you $1 million down payment, and Bill, you carry paper back for $15 million.
Mhm.
How much actual money did you receive in that transaction so far?
Nothing, because they all go to tax.
Yeah. Yeah, you get the million, and then you'll have the huge tax bill, right? So you are, but the point is, you get that million and you'll pay it on tax. Now that 15 million is in a carryback position.
Right.
Okay. So hypothetically, let's imagine you said, you know what, Don, I don't want to pay any tax right now. In fact, I'd like to defer it all. You sound like a really good guy. Like, let me just carry back 100% financing. Now, you wouldn't do that in real life, but just hypothetically, imagine you owned it free and clear at 16 million, and you just said, let me just carry back all of the money. In that scenario, Bill, if you received zero, how much tax is triggered on zero right now?
0.
You got it. Okay. So that's an installment sale. It's very common. It happens all the time. We know it. Your CPA knows it. It's very common. The reason you wouldn't do that is you're not going to want to finance someone 100%. You have to foreclose on it. You're not going to put all your eggs in one basket, and you want to go take your capital and do something else. And so that's why the traditional installment sale is blockbuster. It's not a great solution. In fact, you forfeit the 1031 exchange, all of these things. Most people do not do those. However, the tax law goes back to the 1920s, and that's the foundation of the Deferred Sales Trust. So here we go. You ready?
Yep.
So we form a brand new trust, and we say, Don, you seem like a great guy, but go get your own loan, go get your own cash, whatever. We don't care how you get it. And Don's probably happy too, because he's like, I can borrow at 3.5%. Like, that's great. So he gets 16 million somewhere else. But we ask him and you to cooperate with the trust. And Bill, you actually you sell the asset to the trust for 16 million, and you carry back 100% financing for the trust.
Okay.
Immediately, the trust turns around and sells it to Don, and Don puts the $16 million into the trust. Don takes the title, and he's gone. Now watch this. The trust bought it for 16 million and sold it for 16 million. So Bill, how much gain does the trust have?
0.
Now you're left with a promissory note for 16 million. Now in this scenario, you happen to owe 7 million. And so we would pay off the bank. And I'm trying to look for my HP 12C here. So there's a $9 million promissory note. Okay. So the bank's been paid off, and you're left with a $9 million promissory note owed back to you over a period of time, typically 10 years. Interest rates are typically 8% compounding, but you have become the lender, not the owner, the lender. So does that make sense so far? Any questions there?
No, I got it.
Adam, did that make sense? Any questions there?
Spot on. Love it so far. Yep.
Okay. All right. So then the question becomes, well, then how and where the funds are invested? And this is also important. You say, well, if I'm going to let this trust, I'm going to carry back all this money, like, where are the funds at? And this is the cool part. Bill, do you want to go build another RV park for 7 million and change it for 16 million? Do you want to do that?
Yep.
Okay. So the next day, Bill, you can form an LLC, and the funds can go into that LLC up to 80% of, in this scenario, it'd be 9 million. So 7.2 million. The next day, you form the LLC, and you're the owner of that LLC. You open up the bank, wherever you bank at with that LLC, and you're going to joint venture partner with the trust. And this is the single reason why I started this company right here. And this, I already told you the Monday morning back Corey story. I told you the Shea Pope 72 unit story. But that 7.2 million can go buy the land, can develop the project. Okay. And you, Bill, will get 80% upside of that. The trust would get 20% and an 8% pref, but the trust already owes you that money anyways. So we call it the go fund yourself. So instead of getting funding from a bank, we're using the money. Yeah, you like it, but I can tell.
I like that. That's pretty cool.
You saw it. You clicked. So any questions there? Yeah, that was fast, Bill.
No, that's good. Yeah. So, so that money the trust would owe me, is there not some imputed interest on that?
Yeah. So the first amount, the 9 million, it owes you 8% compounding right away, no matter what, no matter how and where the funds go to be invested, whether it goes into the stock market or with you into a joint venture, it's always compounding, right? So the goal is to go make that money back. The other 20%, it's got to stay back in investment grade securities. And if you have a financial advisor, Bill, let's get them connected. It just can't be a related party. You've got to get them signed up with us. Okay. Yeah. All NDA'd and everything else, right? We like to work with independent guys. Those are the ones that are the best. But all that being said, you have to approve of every investment. You have to say yes. And also there is a risk tolerance questionnaire that you have to fill out. And are you married, Bill?
I'm single.
Okay. So just be yourself. You're just going to fill it out. And based upon that, it's kind of like the constitution for how and where the funds are invested. However, they're never invested without your approval. Now, they're also not invested without my approval. This is key. I'm third party, unrelated trustee. I'm not your nephew. I'm not your son. I wasn't the best man in your wedding. I wasn't your college roommate. I wasn't a former employee. We're completely separated, okay? And my role as a trustee is to make sure as much as I can that the financial advisor is doing his job and that this money is getting paid back to Bill, right? And these investments are happening, right? So the financial advisor can't be the trustee. Trustee can't be the financial advisor. But Bill, you're the CEO, right? You're like the CEO. I'm like the COO, and the financial advisor is like a CFO. And it's this business trust, and the entire goal of this trust is to pay back the $9 million to Bill plus a rate of return. Right? I make my ongoing fees. Financial advisor makes his ongoing fees, and then Bill, you're working with more wealth to build. Now let's go back to that scenario. The $7 million or so goes into the park. That park sells again. Let's just call it $17 million. There's a $10 million gain. Okay. This is the cool part. The original $7 million goes back into the trust plus an 8% pref. And let's just say there's $10 million after all of that. Then Bill, you get $8 million of that. The other $2 million rolls into the trust to pay you back what's been compounding over the time period. Okay. But now you can have two promissory notes. The first one for 9 and the second one for about 8. Okay. And then we call it rinse, wash, repeat.
I like it. So the question about I'm still focusing on that one point. So the trust owes me money, but is there not a tax on the interest on that or not? Or how does that work? Or is that just deferred?
Good question. Yeah, when you start receiving payments back, you will be taxed, right?
Yeah, I'm saying that. But before, let's just say it went for 2 years and I didn't receive any money. I would still have to pay the tax on the unreported interest, would I not? No.
You're gonna love this, Bill. So it's kind of like an IRA in this respect.
Okay.
Right. When do you pay tax on an IRA?
When it comes out.
You got it.
Yeah.
So when's it coming out, Bill?
When you need the money.
Yeah. So good question. So we structure the promissory note to pay you out at any given point. There's a payment schedule set to come back to you. Now, can we delay it a couple years? Yeah. In fact, the client we did in Colorado, the $25 million client, we delayed their payment out 4 years.
Wow.
So it's compounding at 8%, 8%, 8%, 8%. Now, it doesn't mean we can't guarantee or promise the 8%. It might be at 5%, it might be at 10, it might be at 2, it might be negative. I mean, all of these, the performance is different than the compounding rate, although it's been doing pretty good so far. Mm-hmm. Now, but they're not paying tax. It's like an IRA. It's sitting there. It's in a deferral. So it's deferring capital gains tax. It's also deferring income tax. Now, when their payment starts, they'll start paying tax. Does that make sense?
Yeah. How does it defer the estate tax?
How does it eliminate the estate tax?
Oh, eliminate. That's even better.
It eliminates the estate tax, Bill, because it's moving the funds outside the taxable estate.
Oh, okay.
Simple as that. Whereas in a 1031, it's inside of your taxable estate, and then you die and your kids get a stepped up basis. You have any kids, Bill?
Yeah, I got 2.
Okay. So that's great. And I call it the tiger by the tail is the capital gains tax. People, we've been taught in 1031, drop and swap, swap until you drop, right? That would solve that. Let's just estimate your net worth is $50 million. Boom. But immediately it doesn't take out the estate tax. They're going to say, oh, it's $50 million. That's great. You don't owe any capital gains tax, but you owe us 40% of what's above the exclusions. And in this scenario, if you're married, single is 12 million. Yeah, right. You know it, right? So instead, we're going to move it outside the taxable estate, and they're going to inherit it, and they would be the beneficiaries of that trust, and then they would inherit estate tax free.
Wow, very impressive. Have you had any letter rulings on any of your trusts you set up?
Yeah, so let's talk about the legal track record. So there is a private letter ruling. In form and substance, nothing changed. It was good. There's been 12 no change IRS audits, including a $125 million deal in San Diego. There's also been 3 formal audits, all of which have had no findings, no changes. Okay. There's also been national law firms that have gone through this extensively. In fact, I'm going to jump back into my presentation here to show you this. So we've done some cryptocurrency sales. Okay, we did another deal at 50,000 that went to 50 million, and we did it for $5 million, and we did another one for $2.5 million for cryptocurrency. And this is the number one secret to overcoming the biggest objection to the deferred sales trust, which is exactly what Bill is asking, and probably what you're all asking right now. Wow, Brett, this sounds amazing. But like, what's the track record? Like, I need my trusted advisor to say yes before I move forward. I don't understand how my CPA doesn't know about this. And I want to tell you just one deal story. In fact, we'll probably have time for 2, to give you some credibility, to give you some confidence, even if you have no deferred sales trust or tax deferral experience. And here's the story. Bill, you ready to participate still?
Yep.
All right. So have you heard of a guy named David Young by any chance?
No, I have not.
Have you heard of a guy named Bill Gross?
Yes.
Okay. So Bill Gross is one of the most respected gentlemen in the last 30 years in financial wealth management. In fact, he was like the bond king, something like that, right? Well, guess who Bill Gross's at PIMCO right-hand guy was? David Young. Okay.
Oh, wow. Okay.
David Young. Okay. So David and Bill, with 4 other guys, built PIMCO for about over 20 years, from 80 billion to 1.2 trillion.
Ooh.
So I call these guys like the Hall of Famers. These are like the Joe Montanas, the Jerry Rices, right? These they're kind of like a Mark Cuban of the financial advising. They're just super respected, super well known, really thoughtful, great guys. Okay. So there's one thing for me to say how confident I am. I'm in sales, I'm in consulting, I sell real estate. That's where I started out. But I'm still kind of my opinion's maybe this big on tax and legal stuff, right?
Yeah.
But talk about David Young. So David Young gets approached, right? And you can imagine these guys get approached with stuff all the time. Hey, sell my tax deferral thing. Do this. Give me access to your list, to your clients. I have the best thing. Okay, so David gets approached with the Deferred Sales Trust 4 years ago. And he doesn't do a 2-day due diligence. He doesn't do a 2-week. He doesn't do a 2-month. He does a 2-year due diligence on us, on the structure, with the clients, with the banks. Has his legal team review it, tax team review it. He flies back, meets with my business partner who's the tax attorney, sits down on a whiteboard and maps it all out for 2 days with their legal team.
Wow.
And they came away with 2 conclusions at the end of this, Bill and Adam and everybody else. Number 1, that's the smartest person we've ever met. And by the way, that's a big statement for them. It's definitely the statement for me. He's the smartest person.
Wow.
I like him to like the Beethoven of tax. He's brilliant. He worked for Arthur Andersen. He's a CPA and tax attorney. He is brilliant, okay? And number 2, we are all in. We will put our name on this. And so he is a part of the Deferred Sales Trust New Asset Allocation Advisory team. And this is really the question, Bill, right here. If it's good enough for David Young and his legal team, after 2 years of due diligence, after running with Bill Gross for 20 years, right, and he's putting his name on it, is it good enough for you, Bill, and your legal team?
I would think so. Yeah. Pretty impressive.
Adam?
I'd agree with that too.
Anybody else? Because this is the crux of it. Like, if this is the big domino, if we can get over the fact that it's 100% legal, has a perfect track record, and has worked every single time, and emotionally, even though your people don't know it, but David does, everything else just falls into place. Okay. And in fact, you can go watch David Young share his entire story on my podcast. He's an economist. He teaches at UC Irvine. He's the head of Anfield Capital down in Irvine, California, and he's been on my show multiple times. He's also I'm coming out with a book here. He's going to have a chapter in the book. Anyway, so if this sounds like you and you want to help yourself or others escape feeling trapped by the 1031 exchange, by capital gains tax, and be able to invest millions of dollars with yourself or others, all tax deferred, then I want you to go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. I want you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I want you to check out our podcast. I want you to check out our book that's coming out in 30 days. We also have this guy. Anyone see the show Shark Tank?
Yep.
Yeah.
You have a guy named Kevin Harrington, if you guys heard of that guy.
Yep.
So he's in my book. He's been on my podcast, and he's looking at this structure right now. We do not have any green light, no partnership. He's not a client of mine, but we're developing a relationship. And I hope to say one day, instead of the David Young story, which is amazing, right? I hope to say David Young plus Kevin Harrington, right? Not there yet, but he's going to be a part of the book, and he shares his story of buying stock, or investing in stock at 26 cents a share, and it goes up to 20 something dollars. And he's going, "You're telling me, you saw the video maybe in the beginning, you have a way to defer capital gains tax on the sale of public stock?" And the answer is yes. Josh, you have a question there? Josh, you there?
All right.
We're going mute, Josh. He's muted. Okay. Back to this. So, by the way, yeah, and Adam did mention that I was at the Best Ever Conference. A guy named Dan Hanford. Anyone heard of Dan before? Stephen Preservato, Hunter Thompson, Shay Pope. We did a whole panel on this. Hunter couldn't show up. He had a last minute thing, but we also have a recording of that where Dan shares his entire story, his legal team reviewing it, including 2 CPAs and another tax guy, and they give it the green light. Okay, and that was done in the last 6 months, so he has that. So all that being said, I'm going to open it up for questions. Anyone have any questions? Go ahead and unmute yourself, type it in the chat, and we'll just open it up. Okay.
Brett, this is Chris. Got a question for you as far as what types of, you keep on referring to a 5% to 8% return. What are you basing that on?
Yeah, so how and where the funds are invested, Chris, could be a number of things. It could be stocks, bonds, mutual funds, hard money lending. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. So I'd ask you, Chris, what do you like to invest in?
I like the market, and I also like real estate as well.
Cool. So let's customize that to your risk tolerance and to your approval.
Okay.
Simple as that.
So, I mean, as far as the vehicles that you're investing in, I mean, can you use like annuity type of structures that are more guaranteed for your clients?
Yeah, you can.
Structures
you can
in that regard.
Yeah. So, but by the way, everything is mathematical. We try to measure everything in the beginning. Where is a risk? And if you're married, Chris, you and your spouse would fill out a risk tolerance questionnaire, and based upon that, an allocation would be presented by a securities professional, and then based upon that, you would approve or disapprove of those investments. Okay. Now, if you say I'm more of a real estate guy, well, then we just go do real estate, and the securities professional is just going to manage the securities portions, right? So it's a team effort here, and the goal is to work with groups like with Adam, and Adam brings a deal and is like, "Hey, Chris, you're selling a $5 million deal. We helped you to try to add value to you, defer the tax." Like you're like, "Well, I wouldn't even have that $1.5 million." Well, maybe you say, "Adam, here you go. Let's put it in your deals." Like it's not a forced you. You decide, right? Our goal is to try to bring you the deals, and you just say yes, dollar cost average, but no rush. Like I had clients that we close the deal and they sit in the bank just waiting, and they get access 24/7 online to view it. Typically, we're going to TD Ameritrade or Charles Schwab. Those are the main ones. We also use a commercial real estate business bank that's a $16 billion bank, and we're just exiting, closing, and then investing when it makes sense for you.
Gotcha. I'm actually a financial advisor, so this is
perfect. So you could be the financial advisor, right? Right, and you can manage the funds, right? Where do you clear at?
I'm with Transamerica Financial Advisor, so I'm an independent.
Okay.
Through that arm, so it's actually UMB if we look at.
And we work with financial advisors across the U.S. You just have to get with us offline and get all the approvals and stuff.
I looked up your LinkedIn profile. I'll hit you up there.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks. All right. More questions from anybody right now? Go ahead and unmute yourself and or type in the chat.
Well, Brett, while others are thinking of their questions, I just want to jump in real quick and just mention how important it is to hear this more than once. Because like I said, when we interviewed you on the podcast the first time, it didn't 100% click. So that of course is why, everybody who's attended, I'll share the episode we recorded with Brett, and then of course share the recording of this too, because certainly you're going to need to hear it more than once to totally wrap your head around this idea that, you can break asset classes, that you're not just like kind exchanging, that you actually have that flexibility. And of course, kind of as Brett mentioned, the shotgun wedding forced timeline too.
Absolutely. No, you guys are getting it. You guys are good students. It's sink it in.
That's why we're excited about this, and we're glad to be able to share this with our database.
Yeah, I remember in the beginning, so we're in the business of selling real estate. Christian in the business of selling financial services. Bill's not in the business of even building RV parks for people to store their RVs. We're in the business of solving problems, right? And to the extent we can solve problems and serve others, to the extent we add value and unlock freedom. It's cash flow freedom, it's retirement freedom, it's active or passive, it's diversification, it's sleep well at night. And the key is work as a team, right? We each have our shield and our little spear, like a Roman legion. As we all line up next to each other with our specialty, right, we can all help each other, right? And the Deferred Sales Trust is kind of that tool that unlocks that bridge of that tax, right? And so that's the way. And then we bring in like the David Youngs, we bring in, of course, our tax attorneys and their track record, and each of us work together. So,
yeah. And I just want to mention one more thing as it relates to, of course, our structure at Happy Camper Capital and how this benefits our clients and our investors. It's just, we have so many people approach us wanting to do a 1031 exchange into our deals, which of course they can't like-kind exchange into a security, which means that to incorporate it is very complicated. We have to put them on the deed. It changes the lending structure, it changes the whole deal structure. I mean, this allows that exchange right into the deal as an LP investor. So huge benefit, makes it much simpler for us, and we'll be more likely to take more of those on if they go through this route.
Yeah, and I'll mention that. So just to clarify, it's not exchanging, right? But it is investing. So the trust, once the money's in there, like if Bill starts out and he sells his RV park and gets about a $9 million promissory note, a lot of those funds can go with you, right? It can also go with him. It's kind of a mix, right? But it's a direct LP investor, like if it's a limited partnership into one of your funds or one of your deals. That's the cool thing, right? It's not having to change the whole nature of the structure. So, yep.
Brett, it's Bill again. It's okay.
Yeah.
Hey, at earlier life, I was a CPA and had a master's degree in tax. And so I never liked.
You're so smart and you got to like that. You know what I mean?
So I never liked 1031 exchanges because all the limitations they put,
Right.
And it all happened when someone did a 1031 exchange that actually lasted several years. That's the name of my company, Professional Equities. It wasn't me, it was somebody else. So it lasted several years, and the IRS looked at it and they couldn't stop it because there was no time limit in the law. Right. So that's why they put these crazy limits in terms of the timeline and why it's really not very effective. So I'm glad I was on the call with you guys today, and we have a guy we're working with to help him sell his company. So we might need your services.
Thank you, Bill. And this is the cool part. And then and I want you to, by the way, everyone can do due diligence with us too. Come on with our tax attorneys, right? On individual cases. We don't charge anything unless the deal closes, and everything is just like, we just map it all out. We form the trust, get it all ready to go. That is key, by the way. We do need to set this up prior to closing, because what Bill is referring to as well is constructive or actual receipt. We have to have certain parameters in the trust form prior to the closing, unless it's at a QI company, and then we've set it up there. But once the funds either go into the personal hands, it's taxable. So the goal is to get with this early. And that's also encouragement for everybody. If everyone's even thinking about this or considering it, you can go to the mastermind every Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can register, and we have clients on there. We have CPAs, financial advisors, commercial real estate syndicators, and you can become a part of our community, right? And we kind of what we're doing now, we kind of brainstorm and mastermind it. And then 2, if you have a live deal, and schedule a time with myself, and we can and the tax team, and get your deal looked at. So,
okay, thank you, appreciate it.
You're welcome, Bill. Good question, good thought, good comment. Who else? We have Josh, we have Dawn, John, Shelley, Ethan. Any of you folks want to encourage you? Open up the mic or type in the chat. Also, no worries if not, but we want to give you that opportunity. We'll wait maybe about 10 seconds here on that. And then after that, we'll maybe have Adam close it down for final thoughts.
Just real quick, you said the minimum's $1 million, right?
Yeah, $1 million net proceeds, $1 million gain per transaction. Unless you have 2 at 500 each, that could equal that in a shorter period of time.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I'm thinking of a couple clients that are liquidating.
Awesome, Chris. Love to work with you. Shelley, I think you opened up. You're unmuted. So do you want to? You have a question?
Yeah, I wanted to. You haven't mentioned what fees you charge.
Yep. Here we go. You ready?
What does that look like?
Yep. Great question. So the tax attorneys charge a one-time fee of 1.5% on the first million of the gross sales price, and 1.25 on anything above $1 million.
Okay.
So let me just give, that's a one-time fee. That's a first fee. So let's say it was $1 million sales price. 1.5 would be 15,000. Let's take Bill's deal though, right? Unless the funds are at a QI company, right? And now this is kind of cool, right? Remember, we can save a failed 1031. So for investors, this is kind of a good way to do it. You can go to a QI company, which will cost you about $1,000 or $1,500, right? And from there, once the funds are there, then it's only on that amount. So on Bill's deal, Bill, that's what I would recommend for you. Instead of doing 16 million and getting hit with that, we could do it on the 9 million, and that'll save you some dollars there. So it'd be 15,000 on the first million, and then on the 8 million, it'd be 1.25. So yeah, it'd be about 115,000. Bill, that makes sense on that? Yeah, I think he got it. And then ongoing fees with myself and the financial advisor. I don't know what the financial advisor is going to charge. Just kind of depends on how and where it's invested. But with the trustee and the financial advisor, we like to say it's no more than 2% at the high, and it can also be lower depending on the AUM. That's including my business partner and me and the financial advisor. But on a deal like Bill's side, if 9 million were the number, and by the way, that's no matter how and where the funds are invested, whether if they're 100% in securities, whether they're 80% into real estate and only 20% into securities. It's about 2% on a recurring basis. Although, like for larger deals, there's some fee breaks, and so anyone can email me, Brett@capitalgainstaxsolutions.com, and I can give you our fee schedule so you can see that. There's like a tax return fee, but our goal is to net 8% net of the fee. So our goal is to try to earn about 10 on average per year over any 10-year period. Goal to net about 8 net of those recurring fees.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks, Jelly, for the question. Anybody else? Ethan, Don, Josh, Shelly, even Bill or Chris. Any more questions from you guys? You're good?
Right. Well, and Brett, one thing I just want to mention that, of course, I caught in your Q&A, and it was just another good nugget takeaway from it, is that even if somebody was still interested in doing a 1031 despite this, you mentioned, of course, they could plan ahead of time when they interview their QI to make sure that language could be put in to effectively revert to the DST if the 1031 failed.
Yeah, we have a 1031 fire plan, and so we have a whole program. It costs you $1,500. That includes the 1031 qualified intermediary. That includes our services to make sure that nothing hits the fan, that everything is mapped out properly. Okay. And so, yeah, if you just email me, we have that company ready to go. The downside of using the ones that don't know what they're doing is they don't know what they're doing, right? So just be careful with that, right? And if you're like really adamant to use your guys, okay, well then let's just get with us early. Make sure they actually have the proper language in the exchange agreement, right? But guess what? Most qualified intermediaries, they don't want you to know about this. Some of them will tell you it's not legal. It's not legal, and they'll scream it like they've seen the documents and they've done the deals, and they'll reference a California franchise tax board memo that was released about 2 years ago, saying, the one guy on the blog, you look him up, he's like, see, it's illegal. And like, no, we do like probably half our deals are in California. Like we've never had a negative result in California. It's been perfect for 25 years. I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands of closes. But there was a memo released by the Franchise Tax Board that told qualified intermediaries that installment-like structures, right, if they're not holding back the withholding that's due to California, that is a penalty. And we always hold back if it's a California deal, right? But these qualified intermediaries, is like the drive-by media, right? They grab this and they go, see, it's not legal. It's like, well, first of all, IRC 453 is an installment sale. It's a federal tax law. Number two, California it's not a federal tax law. It's California, right? Number three, they didn't send this to investors. They sent it to qualified intermediaries that weren't cooperating and holding back what was due to California. So that just everyone knows. You're going to look this up, and your CPA might do a little search, and these are the objections that are going to come up. But just get them with us. Have them come with us. Also, the tax attorneys provide lifetime audit defense. So a part of that one-time fee up front is lifetime audit defense. So state or federal, it's included for the life of it. No additional charge to you. They will cover all of the legal cost. And so that's really important, because if anyone's coming to you with a brand new strategy, you got to make sure that it's been proven test it by the fire, and the tax attorneys who set it up are the ones that are defending you. You don't want to be going with somebody who doesn't have that track record, right? We have that. We also have national law firms that review this and said yes. In fact, we just had a deal, an $8 million deal for a client who's selling a business in Southern California. He sent the franchise tax board notice. He sent all the stuff he could. He's like, you guys, all of it sounds legit and good, but I want a third party that I'm going to find. Can I go find that person? Sure. And he goes, I found an former IRS agent, tax attorney. And I go, as long as he signs the NDA. And so over about a 60-day period, he worked directly with the tax team who've created the Deferred Sales Trust. And over about a 90-day period, he gave it the thumbs up. And so we have those references, but we're not going to give our secrets away. And we're not going to, we don't want competition, but we also don't want people to mess this thing up. So we're going to protect what we have, if that makes sense.
Yeah, good.
And I'll just say too, Brett, on that 1031 fire plan. I mean, my last 1031 cost me $900, but I also had 2 failed 1031s in the past 2 years. So a $600 insurance plan is absolutely worth its weight in gold.
You got it. You nailed it. Thank you. Anybody else before we go? 12:56. Actually, hopefully no, because just go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com because I got to jump on another call here, and then get with Adam, follow up with the team there. And I appreciate everyone out there, and hope to see you guys on the mastermind or on a call here soon. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we'll talk to everyone soon. Okay.
Brett, thank you so much for sharing today. Grateful for what you gave to our audience.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.